Practibytes. Welcome back, everybody. I have Chris Hopwood again to talk to us about personality disorder stability. Chris, what do we need to know about personality disorders?
One of the issues with the word personality disorders is that that term personality implies something that is stable, or like William James said, is set like plaster by the time you become an adult and never changes. And research in the area of personality disorders suggests that that's not actually true. In fact, in one line of research, people sampled people with personality disorders naturalistically, followed them over time just to see what would happen. And in fact, most of the people who start out with a personality disorder in those studies don't meet criteria a few years in. So that challenges the kind of conventional thinking about what it means to have a personality disorder.
So they get better.
Seems that they get better even if you don't necessarily do anything. And that research is complemented by a separate body of research showing that there's a number of treatments that have been validated for things like borderline personality disorder, which for a long time have been thought of as intractable conditions. So traditional pessimism about personality disorders doesn't seem to be justified. At the same time, there's a third body of research that shows that there are some features of personality that are really stable. So you can sample kids that are adolescents and based on their personality make pretty reliable predictions about long-term income, relationship satisfaction, mortality, etc. So the challenge is, how do you distinguish those parts of the personality that are really enduring, that tell us something about what the person's always going to be like, from those parts of personality that are problematic, maybe more dynamic and contextualized. The last time we spoke, we talked about the alternative model of personality disorders in the DSM-5, and one of the innovations in that system is to try to distinguish these two parts. So criterion A of that model is the problems, the dysfunctions, the symptoms that the person's presenting, that as clinicians we try to treat. Mm-hmm. Self-harming behavior or other kinds of impulsive behavior, social withdrawal, that kind of thing. And part B, criterion B, are the traits that can be understood as the context for those behaviors. So if for example, my symptom is I go off and I have an alcohol binge when I'm stressed out, that would be, the alcohol binge would be a criterion A dysfunction. But what you also want to understand is, well, what is my personality? Is it the fact that I'm so agreeable and dependent on others that I get rejected and that stresses me out so I go drinking? Or is it the case that I'm so prone to anger and I have some threat to my self-esteem and that's the thing that makes me go out and drink, right? So the personality part's probably pretty stable and helps understand the symptom, but really a clinician needs both for an effective treatment approach.
Wow. So there's so many therapists that are pessimistic about treating personality disorders. What's the deal with that? Like, what should they know, or are they right?
Yeah. That pessimism is not evidence-based. Let me put it that way. The stability of personality disorders is more similar to the stability of things like depression or anxiety than it is to the stability of something like intelligence. So if your patient has, say, borderline personality disorder, you should not infer, therefore, they're always going to have it, it's always going to be this way. In fact, just the opposite. You should assume probably, particularly with an effective treatment, they'll get better. There is a difference that personality disorders tend to be relatively more severe than things like depression and anxiety. So the treatment might be more complicated, it may need to be more intensive, etc. And packages like dialectical behavior therapy or transference-focused therapy or mentalization-based therapy are really useful because they sort of cover bases in a way that might be necessary for treating relatively complex cases.
So do those treatments actually work? Like, is there evidence that personality disorders, like individuals with personality disorder, can actually be treated?
That's right. The outcomes look just about as good as they do in trials for other kinds of conditions. Again, the treatments tend to be a little more intense, maybe multimodal, including both group and individual. They tend to be a little bit longer, but the outcomes look pretty good, and the outcomes look pretty even across the different treatments. So far, it doesn't seem like one treatment works better than another.
That's amazing. So what's the big takeaway for therapists about personality disorders?
I think the big takeaway is, don't be pessimistic about the possibility of change, but be thoughtful and careful in selecting a treatment, because it is important to get that part right. There's a lot of ways it can go wrong.
Wow, that is so great. Thank you so much, Chris. That was wonderful.
You're welcome, Megan. Thanks for having me.